Question from our very own Phil. What can be shared with regards to the ramps and the on-chain listing product that we've been talking about for a little while? And in kind of that vein, how does on-chain listing and on-chain checkout, in terms of relativity to one another, how do they land?
All right. Thanks, Phil. Good question. So I think it's probably easier to answer from an infrastructure perspective. So for quite some time, we were, as you know, we were testing on testnet. I'm not exactly sure how much I've shared about this before, but there were, but now we're past those. But from an infrastructure perspective in the beginning, the whole approach that we had was to leverage Circle's developer controlled MPC wallets for the floats. So if you remember, when we execute on chain, these are effectively credit transactions. So we're essentially lending for a brief moment. We're lending on-chain capital to execute a transaction, while in the background, we are settling this quote-unquote loan with money, specifically USDC, that the ramps will have funded in a float, and that float is on chain. It's a self-custodial float, and the initial plan was to have it be the Circle product. If you look at their suite of Web3 solutions, it got released somewhere around January or February. So our whole initial infrastructure was built on that, and it was working really well. The supported chains, even though being kind of limited in where the float could be deployed, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Avalanche, Polygon, Ethereum, and possibly Genosis. I don't remember, but we had chosen to limit it to Polygon because it's the kind of most efficient, most widely used L2 out of kind of the current limited choice of chains. And if you've been following in the last couple of months, the testnet on Polygon, which was called what was it called again? Amelie or something like that. No, it was called Mumbai. Was actually depreciated and changed for Amelie. I think that's Amoy. So AMOY. So that created a world of trouble, not only for us, but a bunch of other different projects, because so that was followed by two specific issues. One of them being that Uniswap, their contracts, their routing DEX contracts, were not deployed on Amoy yet, and USDC was neither deployed there as well. So we were kind of left with a no longer, operable stack, and we kind of had to find a new solution. We kind of expected this being a single point of failure, but we didn't think that this would present itself in the short term as being an issue. We thought that we'd be able to find a solution later down the track to reduce this point of failure of having just one chain on which the float can live. And from a testnet perspective, we didn't really expect it to also, when migrated, to not have at launch USDC on it, and also haven't followed up on the actual state of affair with Amoy, but it did not have Uniswap either. So if you do some search, it created a world of problem for hundreds of projects that were operating, from a testnet perspective on this. So so yeah, it kind of forced us about 2 months ago into a corner where we had to expedite our kind of creativity as to how are we going to remove this single point of failure in a context where we were kind of in that moment. So what we decided to do after some testing is to leverage what would then be for on-chain checkout. As you know, we're building for on-chain checkout the possibility of creating a wallet in the flow if you don't have one, and that wallet will be account abstraction and et cetera, everything that comes with it. So essentially, in the beginning we kind of built it as separate wallet stacks. So one of them would have been a B2C wallet stack that can run on pretty much any chain. And the B2B stack, well, the wallet didn't really matter for it to live on or have the choice of living on multiple chain. So we decided to basically test the AA wallet infrastructure that we were using and building for kind of end users and extend it to the float. And being it account abstraction, we can control it from a developer perspective as well. So a couple weeks ago, we were able to run this with the new float, which now this week we were implementing our new front-end full-stack engineer. Recently added the choice of deploying this float on multiple chains. So yeah, so that's one part that I can tell you with regards to latest development on the on-chain listing side of things, because on-chain checkout doesn't require a float. It's a different setup. And the next step with on-chain, even if it's for listing or checkout, we are now deploying things on mainnet. I think if everything goes well this week, most probably will land next week. So what does that mean? It means that for the past couple of months, we've initially been testing with obviously the Circle Developer Wallet, and now we've migrated these, ramps float to this new stack, and now we're moving to mainnet. We have a live switch in the dashboard that lets ramps and whoever's using this on-chain listing API switch between testnet data and mainnet data. So whenever they'll be ready to start testing on mainnet, which is a whole different new ball game, then they'll be able to switch it and go live. Now, with regards to actual production-ready ramp environments that are using this on mainnet, I guess we'll know in the next couple of weeks what and who will start bringing this on mainnet. But there's new things to learn. As you can imagine, once you're on mainnet, the realities of everything that you've been testing, you're no longer dealing in fake gas. You're no longer dealing in fake everything, because you're just testing it now. It's really about efficiency and testing if everything that we've learned from a testnet environment actually behaves the way we had anticipated. So yeah, so that's kind of the answer that I can give you so far. Ultimately, we're still going full steam ahead. The product is being fine-tuned every single day, every single week. There's a bunch of new things. I mean, I'm not going to dive with the little nitty-gritty of the feature improvements, but it's always more complicated than we anticipate. And since we're basically building something in uncharted territories, we learn as we go. So yeah, exciting times.
Thank you for that, Jason. Yeah, I think the important thing to note is development isn't always linear. In this case, we kind of had to take one step back to take two steps forward. But that being said, we're rarely ever going to give a specific timeline when it comes to like, here's when you can, go to X ramp and leverage, this technology on this product. But that being said, also kind of tying right into another question from Big Banana here. We do have multiple engineers constantly working on this and coordinating these things. We're actually in the process of expanding development even further. And obviously, when it comes to internal operation matters, we're not going to dive into the nitty gritty there. But we're constantly, increasing our manpower where core development is considered. And as that happens, we'll be able to create better timelines, and we'll be able to do more and reach for even higher objectives. And yeah, so I think I'm kind of killing a few different questions there with one stone. But good question, Phil. And I think that does also bleed over into a couple of other people who asked questions with regards to on-chain checkout and on-chain listing. It's now specifically Akira, are we still expecting on-chain checkout to release in Q2? I believe this month is the end of Q2, so I don't know, Jason, if you want to comment on that, or if I don't really. There's very many things going on, so it's kind of always hit or miss, expecting one thing, this specific month versus the beginning of next month or whenever else. But do you expect checkout to be more this quarter, next quarter, just down the line?
Well, I mean, like everything, and I don't want to sound redundant, and I know, stuff is essentially always taking more time than anticipated, but I mean, checkout is taking more time than anticipated. We're just wrapping up right now, some elements pertaining to the flow, and and I think I don't know if I did say this or someone from the team in the chats in the last couple of days, a couple of weeks, but it's there are a lot of moving parts, and the actual product itself, and I think potentially next week or the week after we'd be able to show what it looks like, but there's just so much involved in creating a checkout flow for crypto. And when because the reality is really nobody's done it. And yeah, some will be able to say, yeah, there's you can buy crypto with a ramp. You can pay with crypto for some stuff, but the reality is none of these ramps are on chain. Like, these are all centralized flows. These are all centralized experiences, and compared to decentralized on-chain processing, there's just so much more involved. Just like a world of difference between building a Web 2 payment infrastructure compared to building an on-chain payment infrastructure. It's just totally different. And what I can say with building these unprecedented piece of technology and some of the latest development that I can give you that we've shared internally with the team as we found from an engineering perspective is, if you think of right now the leading code API providers, whether it's a 1inch or a Li-Fi or any other that exist out there, as we progress, we start to find that not only that from an engineering perspective, they haven't been purpose built for payments, but a lot of how they behave isn't actually optimal also for payments. And I'll give an example with Li-Fi, and I've shared this before, where in the past, the query response time is quite slow, and obviously, it's fine for any other use case than payments, and that's why they're very successful. Which, if that isn't a requirement, then go for it. But also, when you start combining, in our case, it's not just like one transaction by itself. It's many transactions together, and when you deal with quote APIs that aren't actually accurate from a quoting perspective, and what I mean by this is what you get in terms of a quote, and when you approve the transaction, and what comes out at the end, the executed version of the transaction is very different from what has been quoted, because the quoting system is built around a median price rather than exact price. Now you start really having, at scale, massive price differentiation. Plus, it has an implication on legal as well, because if you quote something, you either have to say, well, whatever I quoted you, might not be the same on the other side. So that creates uncertainty in terms of the product. And so that's kind of one thing. So we've been doubling down on price accuracy, which is quite important for us in our context of business. And that's been solved last week as well. So now we have probably the most price accurate quoting system for on-chain, pair swaps, added with, you have to add the gas, which, we're taking care of because we have account abstraction, working with paymasters and all of those things. So you have to add this input, output, input chain, output chain, fee structure, protocol. So you have interface fee, you have protocol fee, you have all of these fees that you need to like track and monitor and really quote accurately in various various chains. And sometimes, as and if you know some stuff about trading on chain, that not every pair has been deployed on the latest kind of version of, let's say, Uniswap. Some of them are on V2, some of them are on V3, some of them are not on Uniswap, some of them are on other decks. So like, it's this consistency as well. So the consistency of being able to accurately give out the price quote is extremely important in the context of payments and in the context of supplying backend infrastructures for others. So really, really important stuff that we've solved recently as well, from, for the protocol itself, Matter One. And so with kind of checkout, if I go back and I can give more kind of insights into that product, but yes, we're hopeful for it to be ready from a testing perspective very shortly. But ultimately, every time we set out to build something and we do the initial scope, it never includes what we're going to find along the way. And we keep on finding a lot of things.
Yeah.
And this is not me kind of copping out and kind of saying, there's always this and that. And, a lot of people could possibly say, well, you know what, good enough is better than perfect. And you guys are just being too perfectionists and just ship an MVP, and you just like, but it's not about that. It's really about, like, the tech doesn't exist. So So you have to build it. And I know in the past couple of years I've said this, and I'm going to say it again because I keep on saying it, not only just in these AMAs, but internally and with people that I meet. It's quite rare that in technology you actually are at the forefront of innovation. 99.9% of people, when they build in tech, they're just assembling pieces of like components that have been truly like tested and that have been working for months, if not years. Like when you set out to create a business, especially in fintech, it's really about finding the right vendor and, finding the right component and plugging it all together and then slapping some nice design and UX and off to the races. But think about manufacturing before kind of I saw a video a couple months ago and that really resonated with me, and I saw kind of how ships were being made before all the massive kind of manufacturing was done before, and every single piece was made by hand. You had people that were like every single time you kind of needed to create or build something, you didn't go to a store to buy that piece that was manufactured to the thousands, and it was just more a question of do they have it in stock or is it back order, but like nobody does that anymore. And what I found is in the last couple of years in this space is that you're kind of going back to that moment where if you think about something you want to do or you want to build, it's not on a shelf. It's not like you can turn around because, whenever I think of something or one of our engineer or whoever is like, hey, we're going to need to do this. And I'm like, I start trying to find a vendor for it and there's no vendors. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so what are we going to do? Like, are we just going to accept that it's not done, or we're going to go back to how like ships were built? Like, we're just going to build it and then we're just going to keep on pushing forward. So I don't know if this is copping out but I find it, even though it creates these delays, but I find it incredibly exciting to be at this edge of technology and truly be innovating and building new stuff that will change the landscape. And it could have been very easy for us to just accept the facts and build subpar products that aren't actually achieving the vision and the mission that we set out to achieve, and just ship what everybody has, because what everybody has and what everybody's been shipping is an assembling of what's out there. And what we realized over 2 years ago, because we've built it, in the first few months, in the first few years, like in the first year, we basically maxed out or reached kind of the maximal potential of where we could go with what was out there. Like there's no kind of instant interchain swap technology. There's no instant or really fast coding API that is accurate. There's no everything that we've been building to do what we set out to do. Like it's still not there. It's still not out there. So we'd still be exactly where we were, and unfortunately or fortunately, depends how you want to see it, but I'm just not content with doing the same. Like there's just no value in it, and I'm just not excited about this. So for me, and I think the culture that we have at Embr that we've kind of you know built and that we're feeding is innovation, and it's really not being content with what we can do, but more like kind of what could we do. It's more like if we set our minds to it, what could we do? Like, and if we surround ourselves with the right talent, the right people, do we believe in this enough to be building it? So, and that often leads us in situations where we're heavily misunderstood, like heavily misunderstood, because just like people just don't understand because it's just so outside of the convention, and it just breaks the natural way of seeing things. But then the outcome of what is being built is actually the most natural thing and the most like normal thing, like that you can think of, the actual end result. So, but we are moving forward like tremendously all the time. And it's really exciting, and a lot of people are paying attention. A lot of people are paying attention. And we are speaking to, myself and others. We're speaking on the daily with like really, great minds and people that know their stuff in the space. And with regards to, because we have meta narratives that we believe in, and that's what's kind of leading us to build what we're building. And these meta narratives, they're playing out. And these things that we've been thinking about for the last year or two, from an industry perspective, where are things, like where are they going? And they're playing out. So that is constant validation that whatever we're working on, directionally, we are so right. Like we are so right. And, but, even if you have your direction right, like you could zigzag many ways, as you're heading towards that direction, as Dan just said, it's not a straight path. But like there are many different like paths you can take to head towards the sun is setting, but the sun is always setting at the same place. So this is kind of us. We know where our sun is setting, but like the path to get there, we just don't know what it's going to be. That's all.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention as well. I think a lot of things in the crypto space are generally built with versatility in mind, not necessarily in a payments use case where, payments require very streamlined and very lean, pieces in the middle there. And if you're using something that's designed to do this and that, and 90% of those things you're not making use of, and it kind of slows down even by a fraction, a key tool that's required to do what we want to do, that makes a worse UX, a user experience. And at the end of the day, that sometimes means we have to go there, with a hammer and a chisel and make the pieces ourselves. And it's not easy. And obviously, if we just decided, hey, let's use only things that exist and only things that other people have already built, then it's quite possible that on-chain listing, that on-chain checkout may have already been possibly out in the wild a while ago. It's there's some ones that are more mission critical, but for the most part, it's a process that sometimes you do have to take one step back to take two steps forward. And I think the year 2024 has been exactly that quote
Yeah.
personified. One step back to take two steps forward. And I think it's going to show off. I think if anyone here really remembers checkout V1 and the massive step forward checkout V2 was, and the general design language and all the improvement made almost from like one generation to a next, if you kind of think of the checkout and that sort of tone of design from that very beginning to the tone of everything in the last year, this is like another kind of generational leap for us. So generally speaking, it's not just, you know, changing the back end and plugging it into the front end that already exists. Everything is being updated and upgraded. And when, everyone gets to finally get their hands on some of these things, it's going to feel like a new toy rather than just one like like a new iPhone every year that basically has the same kind of look and feel, but it's just a little faster, a little crisper, a little smoother. It's a generational leap for us, and yeah, I think that's worth noting as well. That takes time. But moving along to the next question here, and just in general, we I appreciate all the questions that have been asked along that line. I think we finally found a good way to get some good information there. Let's see. I think that one's been answered. Okay, so from Akira, what would our go-to-market strategy generally look like? And would that more lead with on-chain checkout or on-chain listing? And kind of like how, like generally speaking, the concept of a go-to-market strategy, what does that look like for us in the degree that we're able to talk about it?
Yeah, because we can't talk about
Yeah.
everything in there because there's a much bigger, broader strategy here. I'm going to try to comb it. Um, and so what I can say is, and this has been kind of a underlying strategy that's been omnipresent since the beginning, where we believe that kind of when you enter or when you move from a fixed supply to unlimited or completely limitless type of supply, you unlock many new opportunities, but you also create massive new problems. And what I'm referring to here is, checkout is this, um, it's this kind of vision of something that does not exist, but should have always existed in the sense that what has shaped the space in terms of product for buy an asset was due to limitations of technology, because intuitively it should have been what we're actually building on day one. It should have been that, because that's what Web 2 is about. Like that's where, through decades of work, we've landed in Web 2, from even a general TradFi perspective. And I was speaking to someone lately where, we don't really remember this so much, but at some point, money was not interoperable. Like the normal money we have today was not interoperable. And that wasn't that far along, ago. I mean, I just turned 40 and I remember my first trip as an adult where I had to go and get traveler's check. And that was just normal. I had to get traveler's check. And it's funny how these actual in real life behaviors are exactly what we're living in crypto today. So imagine you taking your geographically issued currency, which I'm Canadian, so my geographically issued currency is Canadian dollar. So the equivalent of that is a blockchain, because I've said that before, that blockchains in our narratives are like countries. They're local economies and people build business in it, and they, generate they generate income in there, and they generate, you know, products and all of those things and revenue, and ultimately at some point in the past, before money was interoperable, you had to, if I was going to the States, I had to go to a currency exchange. And this currency exchange is basically, from a local perspective, if your countries are kind of interoperable, then that's kind of your DEX. But if you're going overseas, you'd essentially would need to take with you some sort of a bridgeable money. That's kind of what a traveler's check is. So this bridgeable money, you'd have to go to your bank, get it, take it overseas. And then once you get overseas, you'd have to go to a local DEX, which is a currency exchange. Physically, you'd have to go there. And then it would give you the local currency, which is again kind of the gas for that other blockchain. And then you could transact locally. But at some point, and I'm not saying that, you know, I lived before credit cards or anything like it, but credit cards when I was young, they were not as spread as they are today. Today we all have debit cards and they're Visas and MasterCards, and they're very, very much accessible. But when you were young, you needed to have a pretty good credit to get like a credit card, and it's not everyone that had access to interoperability. But ultimately, the promise of these credit cards, yes, there's a credit system behind it, but the actual real unique value proposition of those cards, and you just have to look at one of those ads when you land in an airport. It says, the promise of MasterCard or Visa is that if you hold this card, it will work in every country at thousands of different merchants. And that is the promise of interoperability. And that was the unlock. The Visa and MasterCard networks, this is the unlock. And that's when everything changed. That's when nobody started thinking about going to a currency exchange anymore at the airport or locally in your city to get actually cash. Because like this whole payment system abstracted that need. Traveler's check are no longer a thing. You don't need to bridge any money anymore, like in a kind of wrapped format, because that's kind of wrapped money. It's locked one place, you land at the other place, and they unwrap it and they give you local money for it. It's kind of what we're living right now. And so for us, on-chain checkout, the natural kind of, when you enter the space, you see this thing where it's like, wow, this is like blast from the past. It's like, wow, this is just so archaic. Someone's got to do something about this. And ramps are a necessary evil from a unique value proposition perspective, because they're just like your local kind of currency exchange to get the gas. That's what they're about. They don't enable you to do e-com transactions. And whenever there is a use case of doing an e-com transaction, it's all centralized. And that's easy because these providers of centralized kind of checkout experience that pertain to crypto, it's easy to do because they hold the assets. It's an internal ledger and it's quite fast. I mean, it's like your own tilt. Like, think about a cashier and a tilt, and you have all these pieces of paper of different currencies. It's easy to take money and put it there and take the other money out. There's no real swapping, there's no on-chain thing, there's no kind of transaction monitoring, there's no price accuracy, there's no market, like there's no all of these other vendors that you have to basically operate with to get this done. So for us, this product that we're designing and that we're building is our vision of what it should have always been. And if we're able to crack that, we're effectively rendering obsolete the equivalent of the traveler's check, the equivalent of the business that you see at the airport that changes your money. All of those things will be rendered obsolete. All of them. And it's not an easy achievement. And I'm sure that when Visa and MasterCard started building what they ought to, what they vision transacting should be in a modern world, I'm like, there's no doubt that it was complicated and they were met with relentless amount of delays. Relentless. Because they're just not sticking two pieces of Lego that have been existing for 10 years together and they perfectly match and that's it. They had to build the Lego pieces. They had to build them all. And they had to work with other people that were building new Lego pieces. And then when they were ready, then they could put their Lego piece with their Lego piece and then start building something collectively. And that's kind of what crypto is. It's this collective thing that everybody's building their own Lego piece, and everybody has their own delays, and everybody's trying to push the boundaries of everything. And then whenever, your Lego piece is ready and you try to put it with the other, and sometimes they just don't connect. You have to go back and re-engineer it. And yeah, so, on-chain checkout, it's special. It's going to be a very special product, and there are no blockers per se. It's just that we need to build it. We just need to build it. Theoretically, everything will work. And, every time we move along, we're learning new stuff. And anyway, hopefully, I don't know, this is just my style as always, if I can give you a long-winded answer. Yeah, anyway.
Nice. It's kind of funny you mentioned like exchanges, like currency exchanges. I remember about 13 years ago going to like an airport and kind of like first picking up on, this big group of people that would always be huddled around like the currency exchanges. And I was just at a layover in Miami last week, and there was not a soul at the currency exchanges. They were still spread out through the terminal, but like every single one, the person at the thing was like on their phone texting or like whatever. It's like that was like my first time really seeing it click, just how in my lifetime, in the last like 10, 15 years, give or take, the interoperability of fiat currency has gotten so much better. And now it's kind of crazy, just how now like that basically isn't a thing. Currency exchanges, it wouldn't surprise me if maybe in 5 years, if I find myself in that exact same airport, those desks might not be there at all anymore. It's just become so inherent through PayPal, through credit cards, through various different stacks that we leverage on a daily basis without even realizing it. And as Jason was saying, we kind of live in this version of cryptocurrency where that hasn't come to pass yet. You can't, you know, go into the US from, I don't know, say Mexico and have, use your local currency at a store unless that store explicitly accepts your currency. But nowadays it's all settled on the back end, and you know it's not quite the same process. So what we're doing is quite an unlock for how payments across crypto can work, and it's quite fascinating when you kind of create that parallel with how Web 2 works. And that's just kind of how our minds kind of like to contextualize this to you guys, is kind of creating those parallels with Web 2. But I think they're valuable and kind of creating that broader image of the impact of what it is we're doing. But not to get too far ahead of myself here, this one I think you're going to like, Jason. What's the news on the podcast? Do we still expect to do it? Yeah, what are like how's that kind of shaping up, and what do you expect that will entail?
So yes, it's definitely still gonna happen. There's been some recent kind of change, and I think and I feel that it's gonna kind of be repurposed for a different audience that we had initially anticipated to be more of a B2B audience, that are more interested in kind of crypto partners and things like that, and real kind of high level stuff, going in deep with some of the technologies and etc. But it most probably will shift to be more of a broad mass audience type of pod. And so with this in mind, it kind of got put on ice right now until more is announced from a business perspective. And once these things are announced, we'll be able to kind of pursue our kind of objective with the pod, which will be about education and kind of different than what exists out there right now. But yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I always enjoyed our podcast, so I'm looking forward to that day when I get to sit down and catch up on the latest episode. That is for sure. And yeah, I think we're making our way through these questions. Kind of another one. This is sort of a little bit of a backtrack. A while ago, we mentioned a Telegram buy bot, kind of in the vein of Bubble buy bot, just with our own touch and with some new, capabilities of Telegram. Um, is there anything we can talk about with that, with regards to that? I know it's kind of
Yeah,
there,
so
but
so the product itself, like you said, like we said, it's from a top level perspective, top layer perspective, the what's in Telegram and like its features and the chart and all of those things and etc. That was already the problem with the bot is where does it fit in everything, and also what is it running on? And as everything that I've been telling you with regards to the protocol and etc., like once all of that will be running and clean and scalable, then we will be able to diversify at the kind of app and product layer, diversify our kind of product range. So, I mean, we could focus on just the bot, but like it's irrelevant because we need to make sure that the infrastructure is so that interoperability kind of thing that we need to solve. Otherwise, if we don't solve it, we're just left with what we already have, which is same chain, bridging, swapping, no fiat integration, no connection with traditional banking rail, none of that. So, I mean, the same has already been built, and there's no like we could ship it. There's no value add. Like there is no need for and kind of, I'll give you another example, which I'm big in technology, hardware and things like that. I love like gadgets and stuff. And last week there's a new, Sonos just launched their new headphones. I mean, the world doesn't need a new manufacturer of headphones. Sonos, guys, you already do something really well. Keep doing that. Like, not messing around with the shit that others do really well. So it's the same thing with us. It's like, why would we do the same thing as the others? Like, there's plenty of people already doing that. I mean, unless we have a real edge, and unless we we can beat a bubble buy bot or like whatever by many orders of magnitude, we're just not going to get into the market. We're just not going to get in it. So we could ship a bubble buy bot that's exactly the same, but we're never going to get traction for it because it's just not better. It'll be better if it runs on Matter 1. It'll be better if it has fiat integration. Like it'll be all of that if everything's built and ready to go. So that, checkout bot, it could be called checkout bot, whatever, but it's not a standalone thing. It's an extension of on-chain checkout, which on-chain checkout is built on Matter 1. So, like, there's a bunch of dependencies here. So we could build a bot that's exactly like every single other bot but there's no point in doing that. Like, there's no edge here.
Yeah, as with a number of other items, it's getting the infrastructure down pat, and then all these doors unlock for us across the board. Things we've talked about a long time ago, things we're talking about now, things we've talked about in the middle. That's all about, making sure the infrastructure itself is solid first. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that day those doors open, because there are tons and tons of ideas that we have of the ways that we can use these technologies to, just like, Telegram, that's not a one-off kind of, we've identified an area where you can really have an impact. There are a few different things we have spinning up in our heads right now about what we can do. So yeah, it's an exciting time. We just have to make sure that we have our ducks in a row first, and then, you know, everything else will follow. Everything else will follow. And with that, I'm going to give it another maybe minute or two. And if anyone has a final question, this is your pretty much the last chance. But I want to thank everyone for coming in today and leaving good questions and engaging us. And I think this has been a fun one. So I hope you guys had as much fun as us. And yeah, we look forward to finding another having another opportunity to speak with you guys in a couple of weeks. So keep your ears open and your eyes open. And let me see. Oh, okay. Bouncer had a question. Are we looking at that Coinbase? I think it's like on-chain summer hackathon. That's something I keep seeing pop up.
No, not because it's not an interesting hackathon. It's just that, like, we know what we want to build. We're building it. And that's it. Hackathons are generally, if you know what they are, then you'll know that, that's not what we do. And generally it's for like groups of new people that come together. They have this new idea, they want to start working on it. And generally it's something you can build within a weekend or within a week. And that's it. It's kind of a project and it's fun and etc. And that's not what we do. So the base and Coinbase hackathons are to attract new developers to build on chain. I mean, we've been building on chain for the last 3 years, so this is not a new thing for us. If we had, if we everything was built, maybe the bot could be a nice little project, a weekend project to do kind of in a hackathon. But yeah, this is not our thing. I don't know if that makes sense, unless most people did not know what a hackathon was and how do we position ourselves in that kind of style of thing. But anyway.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think hackathons are extremely useful events at a specific point where it makes sense to kind of, slow down a little bit, kind of spread your wings a little bit. So yeah, definitely we know exactly, what we want to do, and it's not quite befitting our time in the short term. But who's to say we won't participate in a hackathon down the road? Maybe there'll be an Ember hackathon someday. You never know. That'd be
It's
quite
quite
cool.
but generally speaking, it's quite rare to have like businesses participate in,
Mhm,
or established project participate in hackathon. Generally, it's like
mhm,
students, those solo developers that are that's kind of the style. You're still at school, you're looking for, some place where you can push yourself over kind of a weekend or etc. That's kind of what hackathons are.
mhm. And final question, I will entertain you, Robin. Are we convinced that we are in the best position we've ever been, just in a broad sense?
Well, this one is yours to answer, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it could I mean, like, all things considered, this is the best position we could possibly be in. It's, that's the thing that's really hard to translate sometimes, when we can't exactly say everything we really, really, really wish we could say. But it's an exciting time, and there is even some evidence within this one AMA that we've had here that I think could corroborate that story in a practical way. But I'll leave that to you to figure out. But yes, things are going quite well. Obviously, like businesses have their, the specific things that, nothing is ever linear. It's never a 100%, sunshine and rainbows, but we absolutely are in the best position, I think, that we've ever been before. And I say that with much gusto. So yeah, with that, I think that's a perfect place to wrap this up. I genuinely appreciate all of you guys for coming today. I look forward to doing something similar in a couple of weeks, and yeah, we'll let you know what that's going to look like. And yeah, you guys have a lovely evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and we'll catch you guys next time. Until then,
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
take care, guys.